I suppose it comes from my work in public policy. For years now, I've worked in public policies, more precisely in social security. And there was always this understanding that public policies, if they need to be sound and if they are sustainable, then they need to be human rights based. So I suppose even when I was not that conscious of the importance of human rights, I was conscious of what was necessary to make public policy sound. And that is certainly compliance with human rights. So I would consider that my interest or my attachment or my involvement in human rights has come from a long way back, ever since I started working on social security issues. There is a need to prioritize economic, social and cultural rights because they really relate to everyday lives. And I think this idea that social spending is a must for austerity is not really acceptable, and it is an ongoing challenge. I also don't think we have learned enough from the crisis, how important it is to consult people, to have participation, to have people part of the decision-making process. I think that in many countries, the austerity measures would have been better understood and probably better accepted if people had felt they had been consulted and they had been part of the decision-making process. And I think then you have specific challenges in relation to specific rights. If you take the right to work and the right to work or the right to employment, but the covenant speaks of the right to work in a broader sense. You know, this whole weakening of the relationship in an employment contract, all these fuzzy employment contracts, 0 hours, unpaid internships, this whole weakening of the relation of what work should mean and what work should also, because not only a social right or an economic right, work in our times is also a right to identity. Where you work, what you work in, so there are specific issues related to certain rights. Right to health, the privatization of many health services. As a result, the quality is not always is the quality good. Not everyone can access private health care, and because there are private healthcare services, the governments underfund the public services. We are working on a new general comment on the right to just and favourable conditions of work, which is Article 7 of the Covenant. One of the issues we bring up is all these forms of employment that are hidden unemployment. But we hope governments will take into account, and we hope that younger generations will in future be able to look at the right to work as a right and not as some kind of a handout that you have from time to time. What is happening to the refugees and the migrants and asylum seekers in Europe and in Asia, I think is a gross violation of human rights. If you look at the European continent, which is the richest continent in the world, and we're talking of distributing 42,000 asylum seekers and refugees among the 28 member states. And if you look at a country like Thailand that is hosting 200,000 refugees, you begin to ask yourself, what is this international cooperation about? As long as people don't have living conditions in their countries, they will come by ship, by plane, on foot, by car. They will use whatever means of transport they can. But they will look for better opportunities for them, and especially for their children. Right? So, as long as we don't look at this in a holistic manner, to keep their population within their own countries, to create better working conditions, better living conditions. And that, I think, also calls for a change in our development aid model. There is so much money being spent on development aid. And what is happening? What is the impact of that money? Right? Where I think also there is a lot happening in terms of not positive developments is in relation to women's rights. There's been a huge backlash in terms of women's rights because we made some solid gains in the last years in terms of women's rights, and it would be a pity to lose them. Because like I said this morning, you only need a moment to lose, but you need many years to rebuild.